You probably already know that Willie O'Ree was the first black player to ever play in the NHL in 1958. But did you know that it would be 16 more years before a second black player joined the NHL? That didn't happen until Mike Marson made his debut in 1974. After I learned this, I really want to see a graph of racial diversity trends in the NHL over time. But when I googled it, I couldn't find any graphs on the internet, but then I realized I could just make my own graph. I just took a historical NHL players data set and then I cross-referenced it with a list of Black, Asian, Indigenous, Middle Eastern, and Latino NHL players. Here's everything I found out. This graph shows the number of active NHL players by race. Between 1958 and 1974, the NHL expanded from 6 teams to 16 teams, more than doubling in the number of total players before a second black player was added. Here's the same graph, but using percentages instead of pure counts. The percentage is less than 5%, and it's so small that you can barely see it, so let's zoom in. Here's the number of active non-white NHL players by year and by race. As you can see, non-white people only make up about 5% of active players in the NHL. Honestly, this was lower than I expected, and I may be undercounting here, but this is just what I could find on Wikipedia because there was no accessible data source for this. You can see outliers like Larry Kwong, George Armstrong, John Hanna, and Willie O'Ree in the 1950s, but you don't see a second black player added until 1974. Why wasn't there an influx of black hockey players into the NHL after O'Ree like how there was in the MLB? The first reason is exclusion. There were black hockey players at the time playing in the minors who were not called up to the NHL. The second reason is that, unlike the MLB, there was no corresponding black pro hockey league that existed at the time. Remember, there was a black hockey league called the Colored Hockey League, which existed from 1895 to 1925, but it was destroyed by white people. They built a railroad through the neighborhood, economically stifled the black community, and eventually forcibly relocated Africville residents in the 1960s. You can see a lot of growth in minority representation in the NHL throughout the 90s and 2000s. While growth for Asian representation continues into the 2020s, you'll notice that Black and Indigenous representation are pretty stagnant after 2010. When I talk about a lack of diversity in hockey, I always get a lot of comments about how it's getting better, and I definitely can see how it's getting better at a grassroots level, but from what I can see in this graph, it's not getting better in the NHL. Why is that a problem? I love hockey and I believe that everyone deserves equal opportunity to play the sport. But hockey's lack of diversity is an existential threat to its existence. If hockey continues on the trajectory it's on, it can't keep up with the demographics in America and Canada. Hockey needs to adapt or die.